are not
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
We're starting, actually we've started live streaming.
Which one is it?
So, the title of our presentation is Living with Belief, Return to the King. For those who may not be familiar with we will be making Lord of the Rings references and also giving it context. So even if you don't know or have not read or watched the movies, inshallah you'll be able to follow through with the sort of similarities and parallels we'll be drawing. Also, just as a disclaimer as well, we're just presenting the conclusions of our discussions that have been taking place for the last couple of weeks. We're not saying that this is the only way of interpreting what we'll be reading, but this is just something that we've been discussing and that has opened up new windows of understanding for us. So please feel free to chime in with your ideas or comments or questions, and we can be open to receiving guidance. Okay, so this is from one of the earlier scenes of The Lord of the Rings, where Frodo is a hobbit, he's a very insignificant person in the movie, and he is given an important task to deliver this ring from point A to point B. It's in a way, it is entrusted onto him, and it is not his to begin with, so it is given to him. And he finds himself in a situation that is beyond his control. So he says, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. So he kind of finds himself in this sort of dilemma where he's facing a situation that is causing him some sort of conflict, some sort of negative feelings, a situation that he doesn't prefer. And in a way, this giving of the trust of the ring to him is a burden can be interpreted as a burden of some sort, because it seems to be beyond, he finds himself in this situation, so it seems to be something beyond his control, and something that he needs to take care of. And in a way, we may say, is this an evil situation for Frodo? Or what is the evil in this situation? Or what does it mean for something to be evil? How can Frodo or I or you or we make sense of our feelings in a situation where we are face to face with something that is not preferable to us, something that is beyond our control? Yes. So to continue with more disclaimers. So we decided to begin with a hadith, and it was very organic, the way in which our discussions developed. But just, putting it out there, this is not about how to read a hadith or for correcting others, especially the one that we'll be reading today. We're not reading this for rulings. It's more personalized, internalized, looking for guidance for myself. And this is not to say that it negates the societal interpretations of it, but that is not our aim today. So, inshallah, in reading this, we are looking for guidance for ourselves. Also, one important thing to keep in mind is the point of prophecy, or the aim of the Prophet as well within the context of his life. So establishing Tawheed being one of the main aims in his life. So when reading this text as I would a verse of the Quran, trying to understand what sort of guidance can I extract for myself here and now. So I guess I can, or if somebody wants to read, they can read the hadith, or it's okay if not. All right, so I'll read it, or Eminabi, the English.
On the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, say, whoever of you seals an evil, let him change it with his hand, and if he's not able to do so, then with his tongue, and if he's not able to do so, then with his heart, and that is the weakest of faith.
Thank you for that reading. In reading this, I guess one thing to bear in mind as we read this is, how am I to operate as a human being and extract guidance from this for myself? So some questions that I'm just going to pose here that, inshallah, our aim is to kind of discuss and question as we go further is, what does it mean for something to be evil, or as the original text says, munkar? It says, whosoever of you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. So what does this evil, this munkar, refer to? Another question to keep in mind is, what does it mean for me to change something with my hand or with my tongue or with my heart? And that being the weakest of faith. Keeping in mind that with the implication here that the text is making, that belief, or the weakest of the faith being that change of an evil with the heart. We'll get into all this, inshallah. But if belief is just, for example, a mental exercise and doesn't have some sort of relevance or bearing in my life here and now, while I may not be negating belief, I can ask myself, am I ignoring the fullness of the manifestation of belief in my life? Something else to also keep in mind is, just on one, I'm just throwing kind of like different ideas out there, and then inshallah these will come together more, in just my expressions as a human being, if someone does something for me, I will verbally also express my feelings in that situation. I will also take action to express myself as well. So that just being a small component of what we're going to be delving deeper into. But to connect it back to the Lord of the Rings. So in a way, I find this ring with me, this event, this experience, and I'm questioning, what do I do with it? How can I make this frustrating or unpreferable, evil-seeming event beneficial for me? What does it mean for something to be evil and for me to change that evil if it's up to me to change it? What does the text here refer to? And if you want to add on something, or Suhail, please go ahead.
Maybe one thing is kind of my understanding, but it's at the same time it's kind of a question for everybody. When we read this narration first, it says the weakest is of the faith is the one that is with the heart. And but there are, the levels, or there are other things included. There are other components, and I felt that I still feel that if if something, whatever the heart is, if something doesn't start in the heart, it doesn't go to the tongue, it doesn't go to the actions. That's how I also see it. The way it is said, which makes sense to me. If something is not established in my feelings, in my the way that I interact, the feelings are, if my feelings are contradicting, then definitely my words and my actions will follow the same way. Just wanted to put it out there, if it makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so what is evil then? What is this munkar for me, or what is it referring to, this evil that I am to change? In a way, when I am face to face with this unpreferred or negative experience, it just won't leave me alone. There's no way that I can escape it. It constantly reminds me of this lacking of something in that situation, whether I'm lacking the ability or the power or the knowledge to bring this ring from Middle Earth to Mordor, or the ability to express my thoughts and ideas in this presentation in a way that's everyone is able to understand, where the ideas are articulate and coherent. There's always this interaction, not interaction, but this constant presence of this lacking that I am experiencing, that I am always face to face with in one way or another. So in my experience with this ring that represents this burden in a way, something I have to do, something that reminds me of my lacking, what is it about that makes it evil for me? Or what is the nature of evil in a way? So for example, with rain, or it may cause a flood, which may flood my garden, for example. So is the flood itself what is evil in that situation for me? Or is my aversion, is my perspective or my perception of that flood evil for me? Even though I had absolutely no role in my preference of something to something else in a particular way, I find myself with this desire for perfection, yet I also find myself with this lacking of this perfection as well. So there is this very almost opposite situation, or one is the desire, one is the lacking, that I find myself with, that is given to me, that I don't produce or come about of my own accord. And so here, or we said, is the flood pure good in its existence? So whether or not it, floods my garden, I may not prefer the water to flood my garden, so that's a preference there, that's given to me. But my interpretation or my perception, or as you can see, the Eye of Sauron, which is an evil character in the Lord of the Rings, which just happens to be an eye. So my perception is perhaps that which makes that situation evil for me. So evil relates to the way in which I view what is going on, measured against my human expectations. There's this constant battle, there's constant friction between what I am desiring and between this lacking that I'm experiencing. So I have to say, where is this, to what am I, how am I, deciding whether something is good or something is evil for me? Is it simply by these preferences that I have not even, that I have found within myself, that I have not actively produced in a way? And so does my innate human preference dictate how I perceive what things mean with respect to being intrinsically good or bad? So again, measuring that evil against my human desires, and within this interaction, within this lacking that I feel, always this desire for perfection of these qualities, as well as this rahmah or compassion that Brother Faraz was also talking about. Do you want to give the example of the food, or if not, that's fine. We were talking about, like, for example, there's like a meal out here where I can just go and eat and just satisfy myself, but there is no, for one thing, I guess, there is no acknowledgement of my need in that situation if I just eat the food as it is presented to me. And I guess first I find myself with this hunger. If I don't question it, and if I go ahead and eat the food without questioning where or what or how the food came about, in this sort of interaction, I am, what becomes evil or munkar for me is the fact that I am closing the doors to this innate human desire for meaningfulness of the situation, or a meaningfulness of the existence of the experience for myself. Yes.
Do you mean like when it is time for lunch and the food is there, since I'm hungry, I'm gonna go and eat. So my experience of this eating provided me food and nothing else. But in reality, the food being ready is actually telling me that my need was known, and the food is provided because the food cannot be there by itself. And so my interaction with it, since I all ignore this behind the scenes, or I ignore all of them, my interaction with the food is leaving me just getting hungry and then eating, nothing else, and it's repeating. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So can I say my active ignoring of what goes on within the preparation of the food, and the acknowledgement of my hunger in the preparation of food, and my situation that for example, I may be hungry and I may not be able to prepare the food, my ignoring of these facts, in doing so, is what makes the situation evil or meaningless for me. So can I really say that the situation itself is evil? The food is being prepared. Yes, I find myself with a state of hunger, but the food is being prepared. So can I really blame, or can I really pinpoint my hunger, for example, as the evil itself? Or does it have to do with the fact that I'm kind of ignoring what is going on beyond what the food is, or what is going on behind or in the preparation of the food, or what it looks to? Right, so just continuing off of that, that's a character, another character from the Lord of the Rings. His name is Gollum, and we'll get into it. But so what is evil to me about a situation then is not the situation itself, but rather the fact that I can't seem to find any wisdom or meaning in the existence of the situation. So I dislike anything that is meaningless, and by definition, it then becomes an evil for me. But in my ignoring of the preparation of the food, for example, that doesn't negate the existence of the preparation of the food. So I can't say that evil has an existence in and of itself, but rather that evil is a product of my perception of the situation. And I feel this need for meaning and a deliberate preference to interpret something I feel this need for meaning, and my deliberate preference to interpret something in a non-meaningful way, then is the evil that I impose upon myself. And this puts me in such a situation where it does not fit my reality, it doesn't correspond with my human senses, and it doesn't fill the gap within me, or the lack that I feel, this need for perfection, and at the same time this lack of being unable to attain it. And on a side point, even if I were able to attain whatever it is that I want to attain, it still is a burden for me to uphold that level of attainment of whatever it is that I'm trying to attain. So in a way, in such a situation, the existence or non-existence of something is equal, because because I don't see the preparation behind it, and it doesn't correspond to my human needs. I'm in a way implying that the preparation of the food is meaningless, so that when it comes to me fulfilling my hunger from the food, it also implies that my existence is also meaningless as well. So my interpretation of what is, in a way, I'm just going to put in quotation marks, out there, corresponding to a need here, because I impose this external this evil rooted in non-reality or non-existence onto it, it also imposes that perspective upon me as well.
Like the sense of this hunger, sense of hunger is repeating on me, and but each time when I go and fulfill that sense of hunger, it's since it doesn't imply anything other than itself, I see it as a burden, in the sense that this sense of hunger, I cannot get rid of it. I cannot change it because I didn't make it. But it is repeating, and I'm just fulfilling it, and that's it. There's no other implication. It doesn't imply anything other than this activity itself. Is it?
Right, and in my repeated, fulfilling of this, need, fulfilling in quotation marks, is a burden that I constantly have to uphold or constantly have to repeat. So with the character here, we wrote, evil then becomes my burden to bear. I become Gollum. So Gollum is a character who's a hobbit who got a hold of a ring, but because he kept the ring for himself, he didn't question the meaning or the purpose of the ring, or what it was, what the purpose or aim of it, or who did it belong to, or what was meant to happen with it. So in a way, by keeping this ring to himself, he narrowed the meaning or scope of meaning for the ring, thereby also doing the same thing for himself and his life too. So this goes. Would you like to read the slide?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ذلك بأن الله لم يكن مغيرا نعمة أنعمها على قوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم وأن الله سميع عليم.
Brother Amin.
That's Quran chapter 8, verse 53. That is because God will not change a favor which He had bestowed upon a people until they change what is within themselves. And indeed, God is hearing and knowing.
Right, so our incorporation of this verse into the presentation was, at least for me, in a way, the inevitable usage of free will within my interactions with this lacking and burden that I find myself with. So in recognizing, or in seeing that in naming this thing as a burden for myself, how do I use my free will to decide what to do with this thing that I perceive as a burden? And since I can't really use my free will to decide whether or not it's made preferable onto me, and I cannot really remove or neglect or change or modify the existence of this burden, the only kind of motivation or aim that I have left is, or question that I have is, how can I then make it meaningful for myself because it doesn't correspond or fit with my human expectations or reality? So we have these 3 steps here, which to reinterpret how I perceive and make sense of things. The first step, as we kind of went over, is identifying the state and what makes something munkar for me, and therefore a burden as a result of that. And then following that is in recognizing or realizing that every evil or munkar is a burden because it does not correspond to my human reality. So with the case of the flood, it becomes an evil for me because it destroys the meaning of what it looks to, and it causes a wound to myself, to my human expectations and reality. And then, which brings us to the usage of free will, because in the first 2 steps, in a way, it's the realization of I don't make that preference. I don't choose to prefer one way or another. I kind of find myself with that state. And then the realization of what is evil is given to me. And then I have to use my free will to reflect on the real aspect of something, the existence, the essential aspect of something. And we said that is changing one's own evil with the heart, which can manifest on the tongue and limbs as a result as well. So as Muhammad Said was saying earlier, starting with, even though the hadith was saying belief in the heart is the weakest, that also being the central location of where this changing of the perception or questioning of the foundations of what I build my perception on, starting within the heart itself and then manifesting itself outwardly on the limbs and the tongue. You have any? So if you don't have any comments, I'm just going to go to the next slide. Yes?
Make the definition of munkar from...
Okay, so thank you for your question. So munkar is that which is evil to me. So
It's not really explanatory.
Yes.
Evil is another word that I...
Right, so I'm going to continue, inshallah. So for example, if I find myself in a situation where the situation is unpreferable to me, I would rather not be in this situation. So for example, I find my garden flooded with water. Is the flooding of the garden itself the evil of the situation for me, the munkar of the situation for me? Or is it my interpretation of the flooding or the existence of the water that is evil onto me? So for example, with the food example, it's because that I don't acknowledge where all of this, let's say, meals are made intentionally for me, while recognizing and taking into account my impotence and poverty and needs, and they're presented in front of me, right? But if I choose to ignore that, is the existence of my hunger and the food evil, or is it rather my, in a way, conscious, deliberate choice to ignore the meaningful side of the situation, which is the fact that the food is prepared specifically for me, the evil for me? So when we say munkar, we're referring to my choice to deliberately, in a way, ignore the meaningful side of something, which actually looks to my human reality, which requires that there be something meaningful in it, because I have this desire for perfection and for meaning. I'm not sure if that clarified it.
That evil or munkar, as you seem to be using them synonymously, is that which does not meet my human expectation. As like a working definition.
Yes. And just to add on to it, it does not meet my human expectation, not necessarily because it has an existence in and of itself, but rather it stems from my interpretation or my perception of something.
Can you differentiate the shar and munkar? Or is there any difference between them? Because the definition you are giving reminds me more of shar rather than munkar. That's why I'm confused. But
What do you understand from munkar? Help us. No, I'm sincerely asking. Because you can see the difference between shar and munkar. That means you have something with munkar. If you can see the difference.
I mean, I feel that shar is more the definition, what you are defining as evil is more defined as shar. But munkar is usually there is a human free will is always there. Like, for the sake of example, killing a person or something of that kind, rather than not there.
Right, but even in the flooding, for example, I'm using my free will to interpret the flooding as evil for me. So there's still the usage of free will involved there in my interpretation, in my perception of the event. And that is what...
I got it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Any other comments from online participants? Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. I couldn't hear the question, but I think it was, what is the difference between munkar and what was the other word? Shar, is that the word? Okay. Well, I would just refer back to when we started off the presentation with that slide. So, and I'll kind of briefly talk about that at the end, but the Prophet in a way almost defines it I think if you really read into what he's saying, because in the Arabic he says man ra'a minkum munkar, so whoever of you sees an evil, or in other words, he's relating evil to seeing. And as Khadija Beza pointed out with the eye of Sauron, that's a sort of perception, a personal perception of what is happening out there. So the question is, I'm hungry. That's how I am. I didn't choose to be hungry, per se. It's just how I'm made. But is my perception of my hunger evil? In other words, I think of hunger as something that is not preferable, and it only needs to be extinguished with food, and that's the end of the experience. Is that really the point of hunger? That's my perception. That's how I see an event or an experience. That's what he's saying. He says, whoever you sees an evil. And then the other thing that relates to his hadith about, and then if he can't do that, if he cannot change it with his hand or his tongue, then with his heart, وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ, and that is the weakest of belief. And we'll get into at the end, is he really saying that's the weakest, as we kind of traditionally understand? But he's acknowledging that your perception is what relates to something being evil or not. Because how else can one change a munkar with the heart? If it's something actually existentially out there, how do you change it from within? So what he's saying is, there's nothing evil in and of itself intrinsically out there, but it's from how you see things. So that's how I would understand from munkar, from how he himself is describing it, the Prophet, in that statement.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay, go ahead.
I may be wrong, so because Brother Muhammad asked, maybe I can speculate on the word munkar. You may know, it comes from nakira, unknown, right? Not recognized, kind of. So I look at something, I'm observing something, I may dislike it, right? The cause of my disliking it is because I'm not associating it. I don't recognize it. I have some inner qualities in me that like perfection, and in what I'm observing, they don't match. My desires in me that want perfection, they don't recognize perfection there. Okay? And it's, as Suhail said, and you also said, it is because of the worldview, my own perception, the nazar, the worldview that I look at it, I can't recognize what I want to see there, which is perfection, and I don't see it. It's unrecognizable to me, and so with the weakest but the central form of transformation, with the heart, if I can find a way to look at it in a different way, in which my desires can match what's out there. In other words, if I can see perfection being reflected there, then they will be. I will recognize them, and there will be a match. It's no longer be a munkar. It's essentially explained.
Yeah. Evil then becomes my inability to recognize the perfection that it looks to, rather than a lack of perfection inherent to the thing in
Right.
itself.
Right.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to use or benefit from the verse that Hatice Beyza was reading or studying from the chapter 8, 53. What my understanding of this verse, or a part of this verse, especially the part that says until they change within themselves, or that is because God would not change a favor which he had bestowed upon a people until they change what is within themselves. I feel like I cannot change anything within myself too, in reality. That, for example, I cannot get rid of my sense of perfection, right? It is always with me. How can I get rid of it? Or my needs. How can I become a person who is not in need of anything? So it means the change is not changing literally, but changing how to see those needs. How to see, for example, the sense of perfection. And in my understanding, since this is a verse, a word that is claiming coming from my Creator, basically as soon as I read it, it tells me that you have to question the sense of perfection first. Are you really the one who wants to be perfect, or wants to see the things in a perfect way, or you are given this sense? I think it makes it changes everything, because the burden comes out when I ignore the fact that this sense of perfection is given to me. When I see that it is me who wants to be perfect, then when the need occurs, when there is a need, and it becomes in my perception, it becomes a meaningless activity, because I'm trying to fulfill a need that doesn't really that is not going to be fulfilled at all. So this need and my attempt to satisfy this need is a repetition, and it doesn't mean anything other than itself, because I think that the sense of perfection belongs to me, and I'm just trying to find a perfect way of either perceiving the things, because I need to perceive the things in a perfect way, or just trying to make the things better, let's say. Either way, if I use these senses or these needs as me want to do something, me want to attain something, as far as I understand Zafer's point, that the correspondence, my needs are my needs, and there are things in the universe, some of them are provided this much, some of them are not provided at all, so my needs become burdened this way, because they don't take me anywhere, or my senses, my needs are not really taking me anything other than just trying to fulfill them. There is this action, this activity, my attempt is kind of empty, becomes empty in my eyes. So then my need becomes something that I find myself resisting to my needs. I don't want to feel needy anymore. It becomes a burden for me, because it doesn't bring me or it doesn't imply anything other than itself. I repeat this one, but I really love this way of seeing the needs. Maybe there is another better way to explain it, or running away from my needs, ignoring them. It's like it's in my world. I experience this, ignoring the needs for some reason. Although I am aware of them, but I don't want to face my needs. And as a solution, since it doesn't mean anything to attain my needs, I try to run away from them. But I cannot really get rid of them at all. I cannot change it. So I am left with one option, only one option, to see them in a different way. And I think it helped me a lot, this verse, to really use this way to approach my needs. And so definitely, it implies, what I am trying to say definitely implies just the opposite, that needs, my needs, when I see them as given, because it's the reality, I really didn't make myself needy. I did not. I am absolutely sure about that. So my need is, if I see that it is given to me by my source of existence, then since it is not a stable or static need, it repeats, there are different needs. Each of them becomes a moment for me to connect, or a moment for me to realize that I am needy, and I am being provided the sense of need, and also whatever is required for this need. I am being asked. I find this very, very life-changing for myself. This realizing that this sense of need, or this need, being needy, is given to me right now at this moment, so it means I am being called, because there's no other way for me to explain the existence of this need. And it becomes a meaningful interaction within myself when I am given this need. Oh, it's time for me to ask and present my reality to myself, that I am needy and I am not the owner of my sense of need, and nothing in the universe is the owner of their needs. They are made like that. So it brings it brings this very comfortable perception of my existence, that these needs are given. When I see that these needs are given, I can interact with them, I can engage with them, I can really take them seriously without trying to ignore them or running away from them.
Also, if I can add, like in my running away or my resistance, or even working harder to kind of compensate for a lack, implies that I see this lack as a burden that is mine. So I take ownership over this lacking, and that is why I'm kind of either trying so hard to compensate for it, to constantly meet up to the standard of perfection, or because I realize that I can't really do that, then I find myself running the other way and trying to ignore, no, I don't really want this lack because I have no way of making up for it. So kind of trying to, kind of like with the story of Maryam from this morning, running away, distancing myself from this lack or this burden that I see in my situation. And the key word there is whatever, however I respond in those cases, it's because I take ownership of the burden that it becomes the burden for me, rather than it being a burden in and of itself. And so, as Muhammad Said was saying, recognizing that the need is given, the moment that I recognize that it's given, then it's an entire paradigm shift where the burden of fulfilling the need is no longer mine. So I can kind of be like, relax a little bit, and not have to uphold that standard of perfection, because I cannot, nor run away from it because it is not mine to fulfill anyway.
You can pass. You already touched upon the points over there.
Okay.
If you have time for it. Sure. Just wanted to share something short, personal. Some of our needs, in the end, they're ours, but they arrive from the outside. For example, I've recently found out that, or my brother was not having a good marriage, and I thought he was, and he came to the point of divorce. And when I heard this news, I was crushed. It was something that I was just very, very sad, very, very devastated. And it's a burden. It was burdening me. And when I hear, like, I didn't give myself this burden. So what do I hear then? When I hear this sadness is not mine, I have a need to see them together. What does this need tell me? So going by what you said, it's really, so I cannot achieve this perfect, even if they are together, they will die in the end, be separate. But even that, I want them together. It is because I want, or rather I am made to see union, perfect, harmonious union, that I feel this pain. So my pain glorifies the one who wants perfect union. That's the one I need in my life. So I found this to be really life-changing. In my heart, this real burden, which is not about my own perfection or burdens, but it could be about others as well. That what can I do about it? But what I can do about it is I can hear what my need tells me. And so it glorifies the one who wants them to be together.
Go
Thank you. Yeah, I think in a way, like how a situation like that makes one feel is also like it corresponds to maybe my relationship with my spouse, that I cannot maintain the relationship that I have either. So any sort of relationship or anything, any sort of status or any sort of quality or success or achievement or accomplishment that I have, then also is at jeopardy because I see, my cousin or someone separate, then it reminds me of the fact that also all these other things on the side are not guaranteed. And that's I think, why it resonates and calls me to question, then what is the purpose of this feeling and where is it coming from and what is it looking to?
I got some feelings, but I'm not sure if I will be able to express them. Please help me. Thanks for sharing, brother. I felt that I was in need of hearing such a story. Like, those situations are also our needs. We need to have them around. So it's like provided. Because if what I want seems to be that everything is standard, flat, but it's not life. It's not really something that I can do at all. It's not in my hand. It's you know what I mean. It's like I think those are also provisions, in a way, and hopefully they separate or together. Hopefully they are happy. That's my really prayer for them, inshallah. Alhamdulillah.
And just to add on to it, in my experience with all these different relationships or situations which I find preferable or non-preferable to me, in a way I have to make the mistake of seeing the situation as reminding me of my lacking and taking ownership of the lacking so that I can feel the burden. And that burden then pushes me to then say, hold on, what's going on here? I seem not to have the ability to uphold this burden, yet I find it with me, so is it really mine to begin with? So in a way, it is not only inevitable, but it is necessary for me to take that. I mean, it's not something that I don't think I would do consciously, to make a mistake, but rather I find myself in the middle of the mistake, and because I make this mistake, that it calls me to the reality of the situation so that I can then get out of it.
So the burden, since the sense of burden is not my creation, is not something that I preferred, I cannot. I am finding it with myself when I interact with my existence in a certain way. And what Hatice said reminded me that the burden makes me question why there is such a thing, how there is how can I get rid of it, or how come there is such a sense with me, and it takes me that it's not my mate, it is not something that I made, it is given to me, and it's not always with me, but it is given to me in the times that I need it. So the burden in this way, as part of this wise universe, becomes a component of human reality that is really needed. So my interaction with the burden in this way turns to be a meaningful interaction from the creator of the universe, that I am doing something wrong, and mercy, from my creator's mercy, I'm being reminded that my interaction is taking place in a wrong way. I am kind of claiming, maybe I am not aware of it, I am claiming ownership over my senses. That's why it feels burden. I am given burden to get rid of it.
I'm sorry I'm excited by what you. This is the way I feel very strongly about this, that people we want to get rid of the burden, to enhance our access to perfection. This is not will happen. I can immediately reach perfection when I see the burden is perfect. So you see the difference?
No longer becomes a burden.
It is so the burden, when I am able to see the burden as perfectly serving its purpose, I got the perfection. Nothing more will be needed. I'd say, thank God, for this. So, or the alternative is to see as a linear journey that slowly I will make the burden less burdensome. Finally, then sometime in the later, I will get to a perfection. Then I will say, Alhamdulillah. Until then, I'm not fully satisfied, So, that one doesn't, to me, that's what the Quran really teaches. The transformation is there.
Yes,
Right, so-
we were just talking about it.
Yeah, it's a defined difference, but it is a big difference to me.
So then, is that what makes you say what I thought was my burden was in fact is what was supposed to lift me up to perfection?
Yeah.
So you're not just unloading it.
No.
It uplifts you to perfection.
It is a messenger, it is the messenger. You have to follow the messenger, otherwise there is none. So I understand it is here. We can be grateful here as we are if we understand our burdens, like you said, how we see them. So important, because our natural reaction or instinctive reaction, without which revelation is trying to get us under control, because our normal reaction is, I will get rid of this burden. It shall not be a burden anymore. That's true piety. That's true piety. No, I never feel. I can try, but no, that's not.
Yeah, what's beautiful is that not only can I can try to disassociate myself from this burden or from this lacking, but the moment that it becomes a burden for me, at the same time, just as Brother Zafar was saying, it's not just, it lifts me up. It becomes a direct, especially of all things, a burden, a hardship, especially the darkness of the situation, the agony, the suffering, is exactly when then I become aware of my Creator calling me to that situation, which is beautiful, because then the moment you're like, something is terrible, then you're like, oh wait, you can kind of get yourself, use that, this situation is unpreferable to me, to kind of go through that process, inshallah, and get to that, see the perfection in the lacking. Yes.
Just one example. I attended a seminar a few months ago, I guess. It was about, what's the word? Opium? The painkillers?
Opiums?
Sorry?
Opioids?
Opioids, yes. Opioids use and how it's the number 3 or number 5 reason of deaths in US. So it seems that people use a lot of painkillers. A lot of painkillers are prescribed, and really strong ones, and it builds an addiction, and people die after a while, just like using heroin or something. And it's number, as I said, in top 5, type 10, let's say, reasons. So one of the doctors who attended this seminar, she's trying to explain, and she was saying that we are supposed to decrease the pain level when someone comes up. We ask them from the scale of 0 to 10, what is your pain? And our goal is always make it 0. So pain has to go away in its entirety. And when we approach life from such a perspective, as you were saying, like when we try to get rid of the burden, what happens, now I'm talking metaphorically, so don't take me wrong, and I'm not talking about the real deaths now, but what happens that it becomes a reason for our death. So when we try to get rid of the burden, it takes away the life out of us. It's interesting.
I know a lot has been said about it, but I still don't get it. How exactly this agony, the way you put it earlier, lifts me up? What's the message in that particular experience?
So, when I find myself in a situation where I become aware of this lacking, right? I can either try working harder to compensate for it. I can try running away from it to say, no, I don't have this lacking. Or I can try to see how do I word this?
See it in a different way, maybe?
Yeah. By questioning where is this need for perfection is coming from and where this lacking is coming from, it automatically kind of like guides me or pushes me towards looking to while I'm experiencing this lacking, it pushes me to the one that is wholesome. The lacking looks to the wholesome. So when I find myself in a situation of, agony or suffering, as long as I don't just say, this is all there is to it, as long as I stay true to my human qualities and say, this doesn't feel right, that it doesn't fit my reality, that something is wrong here, then immediately in that moment, in that suffering, I become aware of the fact that my source of existence, my creator, is using this situation which I've made a burden for myself to call me to him, which allows me to recognize that this burden does not belong to me to begin with. So it simultaneously takes the burden away from me and allows me to establish this connection with him at the same time. So it's not just, uplifts the burden, but it lifts me up as well, if that kind of answers your question.
Life example, if you have from your life, my life is full of agonies, but if you have, my parents, for example, love to have a house. My mother spent all her life in Saudi Arabia dreaming that one day all the money that my father made in Saudi Arabia, they will come to Pakistan and make a house. Her life was this. When my father came to Pakistan, and he got a temporary first home, new couple, small kitchen, my mother, too small, not enough for guest entertainment, etc. Okay, my wife, wait, I'm collecting more money because I'm going to build a big house. Then my father built a 3-story house. All his 3 sons will marry and live on each floor. Huge building, full plan was heaven on earth. 3 sons happily married with their families on each floor. Okay? Before he could finish this house, before he could finish making this house, everything crashed. We went from rich to penniless as a family. And my mother, if you know what it feels like when your God is broken, when what you worship collapses, after a lifetime of sacrifices, 35 years she waited. Now, no, not now. Not now. Okay, it's coming. Yeah. She was broken. My parents were broken. I was talking about agony. So, of course, let's not talk about them, but me, as their son, right? I'm seeing this happening before my eye. My ideals, my loving parents, completely heartbroken, lost everything. My dreams are gone. Agony. One part of me says, this is terrible, my family. My family went through hell. One option. The other option, I say, my parents, so the other option, what makes my agony or my parents' agony, but I'm going to put to me, of course, it's more agony for them, but let's talk about me. My agony, what makes my agony when I look at this possible? How is it possible that I am agonized by them, by their not having a house or a life in which everyone they love will be all together forever? For my parents, that house, we were going to live there forever. If you ask them, they would say, we will live here happily ever after, like a Hollywood movie. Of course we're not going to live there happily ever after. But in their mind, that was there. So what makes me agonized about, to cut it short, I realized, or I can realize, that I am only able to feel agony because I have a sense, or there exists a sense in me that loving beings should be together in perfection always. If I did not have this sense, or if this sense did not exist, I could not feel agony. Why would I feel agony? I didn't choose it, I didn't like it. But so my agony speaks to me of a will that wills perfect union without separation forever among beloved beings. When I get this news, I say, thank God they couldn't have their house. And when I tell my mother that, you know what? What you want is perfect. You want perfectly people you love with you forever, loving you. This is perfect. And you know how you can know that this is real? That this, what you imagine or what you wish exists? She says, how? I said, because look how sad you are that it didn't happen. Why would you be sad? If this didn't exist, if this was not a possibility, if this not a reality, how could you explain your feeling that you're devastated? So, of course, not easy to accept. She still wants the house here. If not, she couldn't have that. Maybe something lesser, but still, right? Okay, yeah, you can try. There's nothing wrong with trying. She shouldn't deliberately go and break her house, but in a real life situation, I found that her agony, and my mother was losing weight like crazy. She had an autoimmune disease. She was skinning. Nobody could tell what's going on, but inwardly she is being eaten by her devastated needs. And I can tell you, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not into exaggeration, I don't like over spiritualize. She literally started gaining weight after she started thinking about like this way. Although it's very hard for her, she's 60 plus, it's hard for her to change this kind of perspective. So, and plus, a son is telling her this, it could mean also you don't actually want to support me, you want to build a house for me, you want to actually, my son is telling me, be happy with this rented, house. So, okay, it's kind of self-serving, it could be read that way in Pakistani culture. But I told her this, I know you can think this, but that's not the case, I want to help you, but she could actually feel that my sense of sadness is a message to me that I am destined to, I'm going towards, that I have someone who sees my need and he intends for me togetherness with everyone I love. And so she is comfortable with her life, she's comfortable with her death, more comfortable than before, because she has a sense of where I'm going. So this is real, as far as I am concerned, it's real for me, for her. The agony, I have to question the possibility of agony. Possibility of agony meaning the message of agony. It has a message.
I feel like using your example, the first thing that is being destroyed actually is our claim that I am the one who wants to be perfect. That is being destroyed, which is in reality it's perfect because it's not real. uh, I mean, it's really not real. So I'm not sure if it is. Maybe it's a speculation, but for a person who, in the moment, who really connects this sense of perfection to the giver of this sense of perfection and experiences it, when the physical appearance of that sense of perfection is not there anymore, he's still, if he's still in contact with the senses, let's say he doesn't want to be, um, he's still using the senses that are given to him in the way that, with the awareness that they are given to him. I think maybe his material, in the material sense, he's being destroyed, but in his inner world is being perfected. It's it's interesting. It definitely goes against what the established culture, even what I hear from my mom, is, but it's the reality. I'm always being supported or guided to have more, to do more, this and that, and without really talking about any sense of something, you know. And but even if till death, even everything is perfect, there is death. How can I? So it means, like, with this perception that I am the one who wants to be perfect, death is so much scary, because it's going to take everything away from me. Because everything is mine, everything is gonna be taken away from me. Then I think old age, or those moments that our qualities are being taken away, it becomes very scary, because it goes against my senses, since I claim that they are my senses. Thank you very much, brother. Yes, my sister.
So maybe Suhail,
Yes, please.
do you want to chime in now?
Yes, I can. I know there are not too much time left, but just to kind of finish the last portion of our presentation. So at the beginning, we talked about this experience that we have that doesn't correspond to our reality, and it doesn't meet our expectation. So we have a choice as to how we interpret that experience, how we feel. And that requires a reflection on our neediness and our inability to fulfill that which is lacking within us. And it's possible we could choose to make it a burden upon ourselves. And as previously discussed, then we're always in our life trying to run away from, or resist the fact that I'm not being fulfilled, and run away from this reality, not trying to solve it, and trying to find some alternative solution to try to feel fulfilled. But as we talked about, every one of these experiences, even if I don't like them, because it's quite reasonable to not like or not prefer that my garden be flooded. But on the other hand, it is necessary, for it then comes an invitation. That's how I become aware of that invitation from the one who provided me that garden, provided me the desire to have that garden, and for that garden to be perfect. And it's through that flood, the existence of that flood, that I come to my senses about what does it mean? What is it referring to? Is it referring to itself or something beyond itself? And what is my expectation referring to? My preference or perfection referring to? To itself? Am I responsible for that? Or is it to referring to something beyond itself? And this is what the returning is, returning to the king. And if we can go back to the previous slide, just to read the verse. I guess, I don't know if somebody wants to read it there.
This verse?
بسم الله. أتل ما أوحي إليك من الكتاب وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون.
Revealed to you of the book and establish prayer. Indeed, prayer prohibits immorality and wrongdoing, and the remembrance of Allah is greater, and Allah knows that which you do.
So the question here, if we go to the next slide, is what is that solution to the experience? And the verse sort of, offers up a solution, and the question is really, is it really the only solution that can satisfy my humanity? As we talked about, one choice is that I take this experience on as my own personal burden. I'm shouldering the weight of my experiences. And in effect, that becomes an evil for me. And within that evil is the punishment for me. Because I know I can't fulfill my expectations from within the experiences themselves. I know that my needs are present and I can't find the perfection within the universe itself. And I'm always trying to find an answer, but I cannot. And in this regard, every experience over and over and over again is a reminder of that punishment. So even if the experience leaves me, I still can recall it. I still have a memory of it. It still sticks with me. You can see that as a punishment, or you can see that as really an invitation, because from that feeling of not wanting what you're not preferring that experience, you can see where that preference for perfection is, it's pure good, because its goodness stems from the fact that it takes you back. It's a calling or an invitation back to the one who created it along with the whole universe. And then you can see and realize that, oh, this is being provided, this experience is being provided by one who must be all-powerful, all-willing, all-wise, all-just, all-merciful, and all-compassionate, because that's what I'm interested in. I'm not just interested in wisdom, justice, mercy, and compassion. I'm interested in the perfection of those qualities. And the experiences themselves don't have it, but they're telling you, hey, I know where they are. And I can, if you listen to me, if you hear what I have to say, I can take you back to the one who can provide you contentment. And prayer, as the verse alludes to, is the solution to warding off that evil perception of the world, because my evil perception doesn't correspond to reality. It's non-existent. Saying that the flood intrinsically is something bad. In other words, I'm saying there's nothing meaningful out there. So that something being destroyed or something not being destroyed by the flood is almost equivalent, because I haven't actually assessed what it actually means. What is it referring to? Because really fundamentally, what is the difference between if there was a flood or it wasn't a flood, when everything is going to perish anyway? As Muhammad was alluding to, you can't escape mortality, not just of what's happening now, but the inevitable mortality of everyone. And it's prayer, or in other words, what prayer is a sort of acknowledgement that you have a need that's being provided, that you are in need of a solution that can also be provided. And that can only be turned to or taken back to him, the one who provided you that need and provides the solution, because he is the one that possesses those perfections you desire. and that he is just simply employing experiences in the world for me to come back to him. So prayer is my acknowledgement. It's my reflection, my acknowledgement, and my beseeching of him. That's how I ward off that which is evil for me. And it's not, prayer is not just specifically, physical actions, but it's a self-awareness, a consciousness in every moment that I can look to him. So if we go to the next slide after that, yes. As I talked about, this universe, this book he is speaking about in the verse, well, it's not just the Quran or Revelation, but because Revelation is giving you an interpretation of the world. What is the nature of reality? But being acted upon through the book of the universe, as was alluded to earlier, is that the experiences that I have and how I deal with those experiences, my feelings, my preferences towards them, is the book that is being revealed to me. Or in other words, it's as if he's revealing to me through the universe how I am by these quote-unquote negative experiences. So with the flood being revealed to me that, hey, I desire the perfection of, let's say, a beauty, that is a garden. But realizing, hey, this garden in and of itself isn't the one doing it, isn't the one that's providing you that beauty in and of itself. It has nothing to do with it. Who is actually doing it? And this provides comfort, because then you don't have to shoulder, nor does the universe shouldering the burden of answering your need for perfection. Because you recognize that this lack within yourself is actually wise. It's being put in there by an absolutely wise one to take you back to him. So even the lack, as Roz was saying, there's nothing problematic or bad about that which you don't prefer, as in like hunger, or the absence of beauty, or a flood destroying your garden, or anything for that matter that you may find unpreferable, because it draws you to the fact that things have no intrinsic power and will to satisfy you. And as I said, prayer is the means in which I can go back to him and beseech him at his court. And I know my prayer is answered. And as was talked about, not necessarily that, hey, my garden will be whole again, that there won't be a flood again. That's not because then you're saying that those things don't have meaning. Rather, knowing that if I desire the perfection of something, it's only he that can provide it, because he is the one of absolute perfection. Only he can provide it to you. And that neediness that you have and that need to be answered are being provided from him, and knowing that the experiences are there for a reason, that they are taking you back to him. And as we talked about, this is what drives me back to him and protects me from the evil of non-existence. Otherwise, life in this way becomes hell, just like it became for Gollum, who bared the burden of that ring. That's what he was after. He was only interested in it in and of itself, because he thought it would provide something that he was lacking, which is, let's say, power, control, fulfillment, happiness. Whereas Frodo was trying to, free himself of this burden by placing it on his shoulders. In other words, saying that, this is my responsibility and I have to actually act upon it, knowing that it's being given to him for a reason. And if we go to the last slide, and I'm going to end with the last slide, going back to the hadith, and focusing on what does it mean to change something with the heart to be the weakest of belief or faith. And if the word is adaful iman, or the weakest, which can, if you study the actual word, the root word can also refer to the multiplicity of something. So I think, at least how we interpret it as a group, is that there is sort of a double meaning, double entendre that I think the Prophet is trying to relay to the audience. One, as I talked about earlier, seeing, whoever of you sees an evil, man ra'a minkum munkar, seeing or perceiving is what potentially is evil. Your perception of something, how you actually interpret the event, not something out there. So by definition, not seeing as in like literally seeing, but taking in something by your senses, something you hear, taste, touch, smell, think, see. So it's matters. It primarily relates to how the human being takes in the experience or the event. And what does it mean for belief or the changing with the heart to be the weakest? Let's say, if we take it in that way, not necessarily weak as in it can't do anything or does very little, but that, as was alluded to earlier, it's his acknowledgement that what you conclude and how you see the world internally, that's the fundamental basis of everything. Everything one says or does is simply a reflection of how they view the world. It's really nothing more than that. They're an inevitable manifestation. And if you take it in a way where it's saying, what he's not saying simply the changing with the heart is weak, but he's saying collectively, possibly, that changing with the hand, changing with the tongue, and changing with the heart, those all together is the multiplicity of belief. In other words, belief is not just simply, because our topic was living with belief, returning to the king, it's not just simply an intellectual conclusion. It's just not some sort of knowledge that I have and then go about my life. But it has a manifestation upon how not only I see the world, but in seeing the world in a certain way, I'm comforted, I feel content, I don't feel burdened by what is happening out there, that things are being provided, and that reflects in what I say or what I do as well, and how I go about my journey in this world. And as the picture shows, forgive me, I was wrong to despair, because then my life, I see everything as a sort of invitation. And I think that's what we wanted to try to convey here, is that changing something has to do with my choice of how I perceive things. That is really the most fundamental aspect man has control over, is how he decides to view the world. And with that, I think we are at the end of the presentation.
I would like to thank you
Suhail, for your time. Thank you very much for joining with your comments, with your attention. I personally benefit a lot. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.